Hey everyone, this is going to be a long, difficult video about the moral compass. I notice within my body right now that my heart rate is raised. I feel very light tremors forming in my hand. And I feel sick to the gut. So I appreciate that I'm feeling not particularly well, but I will push on and speak about this very important topic that means a great deal to me and my battle with post-traumatic stress. So, moral compass is something that vexes me. It confuses the hell out of me because you can be led slightly off path by some people. And in my case, through gaslighting, I was led off track and was made to believe that I deserved things happening to me that I did not deserve, that I needed to put up with things that I was experiencing that I did not have to put up with, and that I needed to stop being sad or upset or panicky or paranoid about things, where instead I had every right to feel awful. And they led me to believe that I deserved all of this, that I needed to put up with it. So their moral compass led them to believe that what they were doing was acceptable. Their moral compass led them to believe that what it was that they were facilitating in putting someone else before me, their moral compass led them to believe that that was acceptable, that the person they were supporting was worthy of support, and that me, the person who had been traumatized and had experienced post-traumatic stress disorder and denial and gaslighting after the event since 2015, that it was me who deserved to be experiencing what I was experiencing. It was my psychologist who enlightened me to their inherent flaws in moral compass. And I'm going to give some examples of where they were at fault according to a clinical psychologist. I'd also like it to be known that I expressly pushed this psychologist and poked him and prodded him in saying, "You will not lie to me. You will not tell me what it is that I need to hear. You will tell me the truth. Is what these people did right or wrong?" And he said what they did is wrong, is sick, is disgusting, and their moral compass is way out. So I'll get to the examples. So fast forwarding from the traumatic event of what that one furry had done to me, and fast forwarding past how everyone had reacted, which was poorly, but I didn't know at the time what had happened. Those flashbacks would come later. Eventually I have the flashbacks, and I state to one person that I was seeing for a romantic interest. We had met on Tinder, and I said to him, I cannot have anything to do with anyone who has anything to do with the furry community. I know this seems foolish because I have the animal suit. I know it seems foolish because that seems hypocritical. But you need to understand that there are things that I have control over, such as I have control over my fluffy rat. He is mine. He's also very gorgeous. But I have control over him, and I have control over anything that I see online because I can turn off the computer and block it. But if I don't have control over the person that I'm with as far as my post-traumatic stress goes, something that my brain is now broken, absolutely broken and shattered from, I need your honesty, and I need to know I can trust you and that I have your absolute support, that you're not lying to me. Now again, I know this seems very silly because I've got the animal suit, but trust me, when we're talking post-traumatic stress disorder, everything I'm saying actually makes sense if you're a psychologist. So bear with me. I know it will seem incongruent, but bear with me. So, fast forward, year and a half in, he has a Twitter account, he's involved in the furry community, he has a character of his own, he's going to get a suit made of it. My panic attacks were unbearable. I could not live with these panic attacks. Life was not enjoyable to live when every day I was guaranteed to experience what felt like a heart attack. Somehow in his moral compass, he thought that it would be acceptable to ignore my need to have total separation away from something that triggered me. Regardless of whether that was this is just the way it is at the time, or I think this is possibly going to be the case forever. You never know what's around the corner. But if you ask for respect, you expect respect back. And I did not get that. He was remorseful. That relationship very sadly ended because he could not separate from the friends that he made. And so he chose them over the relationship, which is fair enough. You're allowed to make decisions in your life, and that's a decision you're allowed to make, regardless of what it did to my brain, which was actual significant damage. The next partner that I meet would be honest and say, I'll be honest, yes, I used to have something to do with the furry community. I had a very bad experience with them, and I never want anything to do with them ever again. But your costume looks cool, so that's cool. Alright. Well, again, there was deception and there was betrayal, in that somewhere in his moral compass it said you're allowed to not be upfront and honest about these things, but instead to grab the person who has already been bruised and abused in a previous relationship, plus the first relationship involving the actual sexual abuse incident. Somehow that was acceptable. And what would then come about is that obviously the relationship had to end, because it was then very obvious that he had some fair dealings with the furry community, and at the time my panic attacks were sevenfold what they were with the previous relationship. It was so difficult to be alive that what happened was I entered a state of dissociation, where my whole body felt numb because I was receiving this betrayal, this denial of suffering, this deception, this gaslighting, and I was being led to believe that I was the problem, when in fact I was not the problem. I was unlucky with the immoral people that I had met in succession, one after the other. What would happen next is a friend of mine would give that recent ex a huge wad of cash to go towards getting an animal suit and an Apple Watch and artwork or whatever it was that he wanted to spend that on. And somewhere in his moral compass, it made sense for him to do that, but it did not make sense for him to ask me, "Are you okay?" So I had this dissociative episode. I then get back home and I experience my first psychogenic non-epileptic seizure. This was very bad and would begin my journey of homelessness, where I would have to hope that there was at least bare minimum a couch for me to live on. So my sister, who was part of the furry community, and I could deal with the fact that she was, I would have a heart attack like sensation in my body every time that she brought a friend over who I didn't know, because I would think perhaps that they are a furry, perhaps that they have association with this crowd, which I cannot deal with in person. I could manage them online, and I could manage some people in person that I trusted, but anyone that I didn't know, I couldn't trust. She decided that it would be morally acceptable to choose the option of remaining friends with my recent ex, the one who had gone out of his way to, and I skipped this bit, I'm sorry, he went out of his way to present triggers. He was told, this is what I was told by a friend of mine, he was told, don't have these triggering things on your phone wallpaper or your Apple Watch wallpaper, because they will trigger Voxy and he will not cope. They were absolutely right, because that was what put me into a dissociative spell where it felt like I was walking in a pool of jelly. You just weren't connected to anything. Everything felt mushy and disconnected and vague, and if you were watching a video game. And so he replied with, loosely replied with, no, he can deal with it. He has pictures of his fox on his phone. Again, this is about what I have control over. And PTSD is my thing to live with. If you don't understand my PTSD, then you should ask and you should listen, and I will gladly tell you my triggers, and I will hope that you respect them. But after that, I would be at home and I've come back from this dissociative episode, and my sister had made the choice that she would rather remain friends with that ex-partner than she would allowing me to be able to live at home. This was after she had witnessed me having a seizure, and as far as I was at all aware, she was too acutely aware of that I lived with post-traumatic stress disorder around the furry community. So she made that decision, believing that it was morally the right decision to make in picking my ex-partner as a friend over her brother as someone to have in her life. My psychologist regarded that as sick and disgusting and vile and wrong. As I say, this is a difficult video for me to film. So, sorry I don't edit these videos, I do them all in one take. So she made that decision, and that decision was morally the right decision for her. When my psychologist said, you need to trust my moral compass, she has no moral compass. She is a very sick person. Your ex is a very sick person. The ex before that, he gave remorse, but he chose very poorly a response to your post-traumatic stress disorder, which you have no control over. And morally, they found those things to be acceptable. Well, that's just awful. That's really bad. This is a very negative video. I'm sorry. It gets worse though, and that's the terrible part. There was 2 additional cases of betrayal as far as what I would request for people to do. You know, I can't have anything to do with anyone who has anything to do with the furry community. I can't have anything to do with anyone who has anything to do with my ex. Whatever it is, I would make that request known, and I would have to say, I know you've been told that you're wrong and that you're making this to be much bigger than it needs to be, but you know yourself that if you don't guarantee that, you run the risk of not surviving and resorting to leaving the planet, which is not a good thing to do. And then I would be blamed for being immoral because it was me who put everyone else out, right? Particularly my mum. So this immoral behavior came from multiple directions and consistently from people in the local furry community that I knew. And I had too much anxiety to reach out to other people in the local furry community for support. And so as far as my brain knew, all furries in the local community were bad, and so my PTSD does what PTSD does. It takes over and says, well, this is just how it is, man. This is your triggers now. Your triggers are everything furry related. And so, anyway, as I say, this video is a bit negative. I do apologize about that, but just think about everything that I've just said if you've made it this far in the video. Do you find what I have said to be moral or immoral? Do you believe that my psychologist and that 90% of my family are correct in saying that their behavior was immoral? There are some people in my family who said no, they have perfect right to be able to do that. My psychologist said those people are immoral, they are wrong, and they need not be in your life. That was impossible considering who these peoples were. So I think this is an interesting way to look at the moral compass, because it's a real life example of when it's very wrong. Now, I just remembered there was a topic that I wanted to discuss with the moral compass, and it comes down to how people react to other forms of distress, of problems in life. Now, this is going to come across as if I am being self-centered, selfish, the whole world revolves around me, basically. That is not the case. But it is just me remaining very aware of the way of the land. And I'm curious for your thoughts on this as someone who's watching this video. So, when you go on Twitter, you will see that there are all kinds of public safety announcements put out by people with a popular status in the furry community. They'll have their 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 followers, and they'll put out a message saying you all need to block this person. This person has been confirmed as doing X, Y, and Z, which we all collectively agree to be wrong. Well, those messages get shared like crazy, like a wildfire. And then I look at my cries for help, and I see that the people that I did reach did everything in their power to share my story, my messages, my channel in raising awareness for what I'm going through, and for that I was entirely grateful, and will remain entirely grateful, and will find a way to repay that, I'm sure, because that support helped me remain able to get back on Twitter with minimal anxiety and minimal panic, which is immensely impactful for me, because that proves that this is all working so far in the support being offered for my post-traumatic stress. But just going back to this second example, is it moral or immoral for people to share these messages only when it suits them, when it's a popular message that's been shared already by 1,000 people, so they just latch onto that and say, well, absolutely, I'll share that too? Is it immoral for that to happen while my own cries for help on my personal Twitter account will receive only 10 likes, 5 likes, 3 shares, 5 shares, whatever it is? Is that a question of those who are viewing it about their moral compass? Or is it a question of something else, that they just don't pay attention to what's happening, right? They don't pay attention to it. And so that raises questions in my mind and makes me very curious. Anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts, feelings, and comments about everything that I've discussed in this video. If you've made it this far, please remember to like, subscribe if you haven't already done so. It really helps with my journey and my battle with PTSD, is seeing the immense support that I'm receiving and the genuine acceptance that people have that I am telling the truth, that I am in desperate need of help. So thank you very much, and I look forward to reading your comments. Bye for now.